healing. What does that even mean? What does that actually look like? That's what we want to talk about this month. And for the next few months, actually, we're going to do a series of 4 videos on this because it's that important. We want to just define what healed actually looks like. Most people who come to therapy are dealing with some kind of struggle in their lives. And, they want to heal from trauma or breakup or, some kind of loss. And, I started to realize in conversations with my clients, and I think you've run into this as well, that when we don't have a correct definition of healed, what that looks like, it can really create problems. And so I want to talk this month, we want to talk about why does it matter for us to have an accurate understanding of what healing is, and a little bit about what it's not. And then in the subsequent videos, we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what comes up in the healing process, right? So, you can think about how you've run into this with your clients, but I think for me, what I was noticing is that if we have this really skewed picture of what healed looks like, we think it's supposed to be this state of perfection or this state where I don't have any struggles or I don't run into roadblocks anymore because I've handled all of that. It can really create a problem because now I'm chasing something that really doesn't exist, right? And so now I'm perpetually disappointed because it's just not playing out the way that I think it's supposed to be playing out. And I'm really more likely to give up. I don't know what else you've noticed in terms of like, why does it matter for people to have an accurate definition of healed?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I developed over the years is a lot of visualizations to help people get an understanding of this. And again, we're going to build this out in the next several videos. But I think a lot of us, when you work through trauma, you've been through trauma, big T, little t, you tend to live your life just because of how things have happened through what I call mountains and valleys. You got these highs, and then, woo boy, you can get in some lows. And I talk to people about, hey man, look, we're not going to be unrealistic that we're going to get rid of all like bad and uncool things in your life forever, right? That's not what we're about, right? But it's, can you get used to a rhythm of life that's what I call the rolling hills, where the highs may not be so high, but guess what? The lows aren't so low. I do want to say as a caveat, because one of the pushbacks I get is, well, am I not going to have any fun anymore? It's like, no, man, check it out. You're still going to have vacations. There's still going to be spontaneity. There's still going to be cool stuff that happens, right? And, there's still at times going to be maybe a death in the family that brings that valley a little lower. But the point is, your normal rhythm, barring like these, awesome vacation, once in a life vacation, or maybe a passing, your normal rhythm is a rolling hill. You're not on this giant roller coaster.
Yeah. That's a huge difference. But if you're expecting perfectly calm seas forever and always, that's going to be a problem. And I think that's one of the biggest points that we want to make this month, and in the beginning of the conversation, is the fact that healing or being healed from something is not an all or nothing situation. It's not that you arrive at this state of perfection or perfect regulation. I'm just always like even keeled. I never have these difficult emotions. That's just not the reality. So I think that's a really important starting point to begin with, is this idea that it's not an all or nothing state. It is sort of the difference between hills, like hills and valleys versus, like you said, rolling, or mountains and valleys versus rolling hills. And so we'll talk more in the coming months about what does it look like with the emotions? What happens with, being triggered? What are some of the, things that come up with learning to manage your internal world, something that we call parts of self, or, if you're looking at it through attachment, what does that look like? Being imperfect but healed, right?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I can just say from my own journey, I won't get into a ton of details. This isn't about me, but when I like almost 10-ish years ago when I first started therapy, I did think that like when I had this big session and breakthroughs and all this cool stuff happen, that I was supposed to be just honky dory, things are cool. Well, I went home and I was all kind of things. I was pissed off, but then the problem I realized, and this is where I think we like to help our clients, especially with, is I spent the entire weekend beating myself up because I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I had my next session where the counselor's like, "No, man, that's how this works." And I was like, "Well, why didn't you just tell me, man? Like I wouldn't have spent all Saturday and Sunday assaulting myself. Like I would have." And so, we still have to say with humility that I know I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
We've had several clients, both Andrea and I, struggle with understanding this, and I think it creates a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I talk about a lot is this thing, shame, right? But I call it the shame train because it tends to come like an Amtrak, at 65 miles an hour, runs us over. But I think it's important to realize it's a normal part of the process to
Mm-hmm.
go through the things we're going to go through in these videos. But again, it's not all or nothing. We're not going to arrive on this mountain peak with some white robe and a cane and hailing, I don't even know. But it's,
Not sure where that was
yeah,
going there.
me neither. I was thinking like Moses or something. I don't know. We're not going for that. But the point is, if you can just keep the visual that my life, my goal is to get off this mountaintop and valley riding and get into just the rolling hills.
Mm-hmm.
My life will be in a place where I don't have to keep waiting for the shoe to drop. Because even if it does drop, it's not going as far.
Mm-hmm.
And I can recover and go better, but I know we're getting into that next
Right.
video.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into more detail of what this actually looks like so that people can have a little bit more realistic expectations for their therapy journey, their healing journey. And so we're super interested in your questions. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I've been wondering about that, or yeah, I have this question or whatever, we'd love for you to drop those in the comments so that as we do the next few videos, we can address some of those thoughts. So please comment your experience or your questions. Subscribe to the channel because we will be putting out more information on this. Like I said, we'll have 3 more videos on this topic. And so, yeah, we look forward to this dialogue with you guys. All right. Let's take it away.
Hey, we're almost at 1 million subscribers.
Yeah, right.
Only need 999,000 more.
Yeah, you can be one of them. All right, guys. We'll see you next month.